I mean, beef Wellington is literally one of the ultimate dinner party dish, but most of us are scared of cooking beef Wellington, and rightly so. I mean, you look at some of those beef Wellington recipes out there, and yeah, some of them look really good. But have you ever looked how much dough some chefs wrap around the meat just to make it look good for video? I'll tell you more about that in a second, okay? So some of those beef Wellingtons, I actually think they would qualify as a football if you ask me, that much dough and pancakes. Anyway, none of that will be ever your concern, as in this video I'll run you through every trick and every technique, and I show you how to cook the most perfect beef Wellington. Now the things we cover today are perfect pastry that's super flaky and light, perfectly even mushroom duxelle, sort of a really nice layer, cooking times to your liking, and then we finish off with choosing the right wine to your beef Wellington. So the most important part of your beef Wellington is literally the duxelle, and you will find it out soon. You need the duxelle that holds its shape during cooking. If it's runny, it will liquefy even more when it's inside your beef Wellington, and some of the steam of the meat will come out during cooking. Now, if the duxelle is then already wet, it will start to slip down on the sides, taking some of the pastry with it and stretching it. Worst case scenario, can even break. But if you stretch it, the meat then obviously gets more exposed to the heat from the oven on the side, and it often cooks unevenly. So how do you fix that problem? Well, I'll show you that now. So the first thing you need to do is obviously to make the mushroom duxelle. So for that, chop some onions, chop some garlic. You do have the recipe in the link below, so check that out. Bit of time when you cut herbs or chop herbs. Don't chop them too fine. If you over chop them, they just oxidize, start to smell amazing, but that means they're basically gone. So a bit of parsley, I need to start doing that first. And then you get a pan and you start cooking your onions and your garlic on a medium heat for 2 to 3 minutes, and during that time you chop your mushrooms. Okay, I want to process my mushrooms straight away, because if I let them sit around too long after chopping, they might oxidize and they might get blackish. So you can avoid that by processing them really fast. I use some king oyster mushrooms and some button mushrooms. Traditionally you would use, of course, some wild mushrooms too, and then put them in a food processor and chop them. So just make sure you be careful there, otherwise you have to do that by hand. You don't want to liquefy them, and then straight after you chop them into the pan, then you let them steam dry. Now that can take you quite a few minutes. It could take you 10, 15, 20 minutes depending on how wet your mushrooms are. And I do have a video up on cooking mushrooms, so check that out too. So once the mushrooms sort of get dry, like you can see now, so I steamed out a lot of water, you need to add some cream. The cream is extremely important, because the cream is going to do a magic thing to the dish later on, because it really rounds it up. It makes it sort of really warming, beautiful, round flavors. And then you cook the cream until the cream is literally all evaporated too. So you can see my duxelle is fairly firm. I add the herbs to it, and now that's the trick. Breadcrumbs. You need to add some breadcrumbs. How many do you need to add? I cannot tell you that exactly. It needs to be enough so that the duxelle under heat can hold its own shape, like you see here. So under heat, so that's how the duxelle will behave inside the beef Wellington. If that's too runny, it's gonna be a disaster. I'll tell you about that in a second. And then you can put it aside and put it in the fridge. So I quickly want to show you how to cut up the eye fillet as well. So what you need is an eye fillet, and what you need is the center cut of an eye fillet. You can buy your own eye fillet like I do here. It's a bit cheaper. I mean, if you're lucky, you just can get the center cut. So center cut means that I just have that the piece has the whole thickness the whole way through, so get rid of all the sinewy bits, because they could make your beef Wellington tough. So now I'm looking here at the head. the head, well, I have to use that for something else. I can't do the whole beef Wellington or the whole eye fillet as a beef Wellington. It will be cooking uneven. So I just cut it out where it's the same thickness as it has in its center. The tail, yes, you can fold that over like so, that it stays the same thickness everywhere. And then, well, I'm impressed today, so I take the tail off too. I cook something else with it. My wife loves a good beef stroganoff, so it's not wasted. And then you get some prosciutto. The prosciutto has several functions. It's obviously dried meat, so I like the prosciutto a lot. It keeps helping the beef Wellington shape. It also soaks up any juices during cooking. So if the beef Wellington cooks, the juices that come out would be absorbed by the Parma ham or prosciutto. Mesh it out that it's not too much, and that actually helps it quite a bit so that the juices don't go into the duxelle. Then you add some mustard. I use hot English mustard. I wouldn't use French mustard. It's Wellington and not Napoleon. And then you just roll the beef Wellington in the ham, okay, or the eye fillet in the ham, and if it doesn't close up, I might have to put another piece of ham there, and that's it. And I just rub it. Do not rub it in Glad wrap because the meat will sweat. Glad wrap is toxic. You might squeeze some juices out. You just gently roll it in some paper. The paper is much better anyway because it might absorb some of the juices from the meat and actually gonna dry the meat out a bit more, which is great. So I want to give it a perfect shape, so use some tin foil for that. 1 or 2 sheets of tin foil. You put your meat on it, and that's such a good trick for literally getting anything into shape. If you want something perfectly round, that's the way to go. And then you just roll it in tin foil. So you might need 2 layers. Just rub it up. Don't rub it in Glad wrap. Some people do it that tight and they squeeze out all the juices, and it's not great. The meat will lose its shape anyway when you cook it. It's going to go back to its normal shape. It just helps a little bit to get it into the pastry. Now it's just pushing the ends. You can see me pushing the foil ends at the end. And then you need to put it in the fridge for at least 2 to 3 hours, because if some meat juices come out, they can get reabsorbed. So the biggest thing, the pastry, you need to get the thickness of the pastry right. And I'm gonna have a little rant today, okay? Because there are videos out there where chefs and cooks wrap and re-wrap the Wellington in so much pastry that you get them sort of really looking perfect in the video or photo, but then you look at the dough and meat ratio. A meat is the star, isn't it? It has to be the main percentage, and then the dish should be followed by the duxelle, and then by the pastry. You wouldn't serve a 300-gram steak with a kilo of chips. That's in chips with steak, not the other way around. You know what I mean? You're going to have to choose a lot of undercooked dough. Puff pastry that is that thick cannot rise fully or cook fully if it's wrapped with meat, because the meat needs to stay pink, which is around sort of 55 to 60 or 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature does not cook your dough, okay? You get chewy, undercooked dough that's like soaked cardboard. Raw pastry, yuck. So you need a thin layer of pastry that cooks fully. And how do you get that? Well, a thick layer of dried duxelle that can take the heat from the outside and allow the pastry to fully cook, where the puff pastry ends up fluffy, crispy, and lightweight, sort of able to show its fantastic qualities, while at the same time the thick layer of duxelle protects the meat from inside from overcooking. And I'm sure you realize now that the duxelle is really the key to success in your beef Wellington. You get a perfect pastry that's super flaky and super pink meat. So let's focus on the pastry now, and to get a sheet of pastry, it's around 2 to 2.5 millimeter thick, not thicker. Get the eye fillet out of the fridge and now measure that you actually have enough pastry. So you see, I just have 1 round there. It's not good enough, because if I add the duxelle to that too, I will not be able to roll it all up. There will not be enough pastry because I lose some space to the duxelle. So I put a second piece on. My duxelle here now is nice. It's cold. hard. I don't want to spread it onto the puff pastry hot. It's going to destroy the butter layers and the flour layers. I want to put it on cold, and I slice it up like so. So I get it all in the right thickness. I do not want to disturb the pastry. I don't want to start pushing the pastry and all things. It's a fine layer of butter and pastry sheets, and if you start pushing that, your pastry will not be flaky later on. So remesh it, see how you go. Perfect all the way around. If it's a bit too much, just cut it off. So you have to be very accurate there. So you have a nice layer of mushrooms all around, as well as pastry. And with the pastry, we're really going to focus on having a little bit of a thicker layer on the bottom, because that's where we're going to bake it, because you need to lift it off the tray and things like that. And on the top and on the sides, it should be really nice and thin and flaky. Okay, so now I feel it goes onto it, and now I just will roll it in the duxelle. And if I did a great job, I should just end up with having the duxelle all the way around. Perfect. And then I still have a little bit of puff pastry left, which will be the bottom. And the bottom is the one which needs to sit underneath, because it needs to have a bit of a stronger pastry on the bottom, because you want to slide it later off. I'll tell you a little trick later on how you can get that really crispy too. So the folding of the sides, really important. You start it from the bottom, you fold it up, and then you close the pocket like so. Can you see that? It looks neat. No juices could run out. So again, you fold it up from the bottom, fold it up, and then pull it over, and that's it. Some people say that's the best part, and then you need to brush it with egg. So this is a bit of a tricky part, which I'll show you now, and you need to get a special sort of roller thingy, which you can get online, Amazon or wherever. It's just a small sheet of puff pastry, and when you cut it, you need to dip it into water, and if you watch my puff pastry video, you know why. And then you cut it. So it's a bit tricky, because the puff pastry is quite, buttery, wet. So you really, this is the part where I always find I struggle the most with the puff pastry. Just stretch it, take your time, cut it really hard, and then you need to make sure that your Wellington is super, super moist, meaning you might have brushed it with egg a second time, because you need to pull that rack over the puff pastry of the Wellington. So if that's too dry, you will just tear it. It needs to slide. Can you see that? It really nicely slides. It looks easy what I do here. This is actually probably the part which I find most, including myself, struggle with. And then just sort of arrange it really nicely, make it look pretty. And then you basically cut the ends off, and here is your raw beef Wellington. So now you're gonna have to rest it. You're gonna have to put it in the freezer for at least for half an hour before you cook it. I often do it an hour, so it's super cold. So into the fridge. Oh my God, that fridge is a mess, isn't it? It's a bit full. Anyway. And no, do not go and get some store-bought pastry. I mean, a tenderloin is expensive. The mushrooms are not cheap either. Plus, beef Wellington really is a special occasion dish, and then you're gonna go and wrap it in store-bought puff pastry that is made with cheap toxic margarine that apparently is one molecule away from being plastic. Plus, the margarine in puff paste is actually treated with loads and loads of more food additives like stabilizers, colorants, and so on. I mean, imagine you're gonna go and buy $100 Wagyu steak, and you cook it absolutely perfect, and then you get a bottle of tomato sauce out of tomato ketchup and squeeze it all over. I mean, you wouldn't do that, would you? So don't do that to your beef Wellington. So oven, turn it up to 250 degrees Celsius or 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Get the Wellington out of the freezer. You have a preheated tray, so the tray needs to be super hot, and you put it straight into the tray, into the oven, and then you cook it. So the cooking times are 38 minutes for rare. You need 45 minutes for what you see on this video, medium rare, and 50 minutes for medium well if you want to do such a horrible thing to your meat, and 60 minutes that will be really, really halfway through, you're gonna have to turn the Wellington around, and I just only do that because the oven I use today is not very good. Hey, look at that now, isn't that perfect? So take it out. Now I need to let it rest for at least 20 minutes, okay? 25 minutes, fine. If it gets too cold, just put it back in the oven for 5 minutes to heat up the pastry. You need to rest it on the tray so you don't get condensation underneath. And the next thing we then do is take it off the paper, and then we cut it. And when you cut it, you need a serrated knife, you need a super sharp knife. You don't want to put any pressure onto your Wellington. If you have an electric knife, I mean, that would be absolutely perfect. Oh, look at that, how thin and flaky that pastry is. It's absolutely perfect. Just cut that nicely. Oh. Okay, now let's have a look at our ratio of pastry, mushrooms and meat. So the most part is meat, second most is mushrooms, and then it's pastry. That's how you want it. And look how nicely the duxelle held its shape. The color is absolutely perfect. The pastry is thin, flaky, light, all the sort of things you want. So here we go. There is your beef Wellington.